start. We've been learning the story of this chassid echad, this one chassid, who he did not reply to the Tsar, the officer who came and said hello to him, and he was davening. He was in the middle of davening. He didn't want to interrupt and say and reply. And ultimately, the Gemara says that he niftar oisei chassid lebeisei l'shalom. Everything worked out. He explained that the reason why he didn't reply was because he was busy speaking to the king of all kings, and if you were speaking to even a king of flesh and blood, you would not have replied. And so the Tsar listened to him. I did want to mention, I just saw a tzlach, one of the commentaries, a great scholar, the tzlach. He's also wrote a book on the Shulchan Aruch, a very famous book called the Noida B'Yehuda, Rabbi Yechezkel Landau. So he mentions, and I think this is what Ezra mentioned yesterday, that somehow the chassid who was davening, he got a feel that this Tsar, he was able to he realized that Ezra, this is for you. I saw at Slach that he says that the chassid realized that that this officer was not going to kill him. He could tell. And I think Ezra mentioned this yesterday. And so the Tzach says, how could he tell? He could tell because the officer initiated a hello. Normally, you don't go to, you're busy doing your own thing. You have your entourage. You're walking along the way. You expect people to say hello to you first. But here, the officer went to the chassid and started a conversation with him. The fact that he was in that, humble mode of acknowledging someone and initiating a conversation, that showed the chassid that he shouldn't interrupt because, this guy, he's like, he's more of a friendly guy. He's more of he's not really out there to kill someone. He is in a humble mode. Is that more or less what you were saying yesterday, Ezra?
Well, not exactly. I think the fact that he quoted he said, isn't it written Betorachim in your Torah?
In your Torah,
etc. That's
right.
That's the fact that he quoted that means that he was familiar with this information.
Right. Okay. The only thing is he said that afterwards. That was after the chassid finished davening. So the chassid didn't know. It would seem like the chassid didn't really know that. But I think this goes along with what I think you could add this to what you're saying, and I think this makes it work. Makes that vart that you were saying. I think it makes it work because the point is the fact that he initiated a hello. He knew that this person has a nava. He has a humility to him that he's not going to kill him, and therefore he was able to rely on this. And not consider it like relying on a miracle and giving his life up just not to interrupt. Okay, so we learned that story, and then the next Gemara mentioned an interesting scenario, and that was with regard to the law of two laws. One is the Mishnah's law of a person who's davening and there's a snake wrapped around his heel, he should not interrupt. The Mishnah said that. Rav Sheshes explained that it's only a snake and not a scorpion. And the Gemara asked a contradiction from this very interesting brisa that talks about if a person falls into a lion's den, can we allow his wife to get remarried? if a person falls into a pit of snakes and scorpions, can we allow his wife to get married? And the reason for this is that a woman is under the death penalty if she marries another man while she's still married to her first husband. That's real adultery. Not only is it under the death penalty, but also any child that's born afterwards will be considered a mamzer, a bastard, a child born after. In other words, even though she didn't mean it, she didn't know, she thought her husband died. So she's not going to get the death penalty because she thought her husband died, but the child will still be. The fact is, he's a child of an inappropriate relationship that has the severity that'll give the child the name mamzer, a bastard. And therefore, it's a very serious thing. And the Gemara says that there is a scenario where we can trust that the husband, we believe the husband died. And that is if he falls into a pit filled with snakes and scorpions. Now, I should mention that Rashi says that it's really or, and it's not and. Rashi mentions that it's snakes or scorpions. And what we see from the Brisa is that even if it's just snakes, if someone falls into a pit of snakes, we can assume he died. That means snakes are definite sources of, life and death. And so the question is, how could our Mishnah say, keep on davening, don't interrupt. You have a snake wrapped around your heel, don't interrupt. Don't interrupt. If we fell into a pit of snakes, we let his wife get remarried. This is serious life and death. Yes, Ben.
I want to say, is that because of the reason that the wife did not get the get?
Is this the reason? Well, yeah, we don't know if there was any, marriage issues before this. All we know is that he hasn't come home, and two witnesses say they saw him fall into this pit of snakes.
Yeah, but isn't there a period you have to wait to make sure that he's not alive? Proof that he's not alive?
I don't know. It would seem that once you see someone fall into this pit,
yeah,
it says we allow
him
his wife.
dead. Consider him dead. You consider him dead.
We consider him dead. He must have died. Oh, maybe you have to wait till the amount of time it takes the snake bite to have an effect of death. Maybe.
So she doesn't need a get.
But she doesn't need a get. No, it's over. She can start sitting shiva. They can start sitting shiva right away, and they can say Kaddish, and name a child after the husband. Yes, Robert.
I'm just concerned. Historically, is this the time when gets were in effect, or before?
The time. Which time are you referring to? The
well,
time
when this is recorded now in the Talmud. So the question is, historically, were there gets that early in our history? Is that
sure.
a consequence?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the get is based on the Torah. The Torah, right? In the Torah itself, it says that he has to write a bill of divorce.
Okay. All right. So chronologically, it was in place. Okay.
The get was way before, from the time of Moses.
Okay. Just wanted to understand the chronology. Thank you.
For sure. Yes. Okay. Good question. Yes. Yehuda.
What about Yosef when he was in the pit of snakes?
So according to logic, it would have made sense that he died. And
but he didn't.
A miracle happened. But logically, that would have been the assumption, is that he died. We would have allowed his wife to get remarried if he was married.
Good thing he wasn't married.
He wasn't married.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
it.
Good thing he wasn't married. But had he been married, we would have allowed his wife. But however, the only thing is, once they took him out of there alive, that permit would no longer have been valid. In other words, had they dropped him in there and they went home, yes, we would have allowed his wife to get remarried. You know, I wonder,
Yeah.
you know, the fact that there is a concept of, if you're able to find out, you're obligated to go find out. In certain, generally in cases, it's called, there's a term that it's called,
Safek.
no, that Efsher Ladas, or Efsher, there is a term that you know, maybe we would say, let's just go look and see, you know, but if it's a very deep pit and there's no way of you know, if you go in, you're entering, you're putting yourself in a situation of danger. So ultimately, you know, they took him out, and his wife no longer would have had that permit to get remarried. Okay, so in any event, the Gemara continued, and it mentioned in this contradiction, and the Gemara answered that there is a difference. There's a difference between a snake that's wrapped around your ankle or your heel, and falling into a pit of snakes. Falling into a pit of snakes is something that's causing, you're going to cause them to automatically bite you, poison you. But just having one wrapped around your heel, that would not be a source of, it wouldn't be an issue, because it's wrapped around, because it's not considered a danger. Now, I should mention that the commentaries here, they find two major issues with this Gemara. The commentaries here talk about two issues. Number one is, why did the Gemara wait until Rav Sheshes told us there is a difference between a scorpion and a snake? Only then does the Gemara then find a contradiction between the Mishnah and a Brisa. That the Mishnah says, keep on davening. The Brisa says that it's a life and death situation, a snake. And the Gemara asks this contradiction only after it differentiates between a snake and a scorpion. What did the Gemara think before it came to the differentiation between a snake and a scorpion? Would there have been a contradiction between this Brisa and the Mishnah? And the answer is no, because the Gemara doesn't ask it. The Gemara waits to explain that there's a difference between a snake and a scorpion. Only then does the Gemara find this a contradiction. So the question is, why is it the Mishnah itself not a contradiction to this Brisa, where it talks about a snake being life and death, and the Mishnah says that a snake could be wrapped around your heel, and it's not life and death? In other words, why is that not a contradiction? Why do we need to wait for the Gemara to say that there's a difference between a snake and a scorpion, and only then does the Gemara find there to be a contradiction here? In the same question you could ask on Tosfos. Tosfos waits for the Gemara to make a difference between the Rav Sheshes's law, that there's a difference between a snake and a scorpion. Only then does Tosfos tell us that a snake, if it's aggressively coming towards you, then you would be obligated to interrupt your Shemona Esrei. But if it's not aggressively going towards you, then you have the law of the Mishnah. Why does Tosfos wait to tell us this until there's a difference between a snake and a scorpion? Why doesn't the Tosfos tell us this on the Mishnah? That when the Mishnah says a snake is wrapped around your heel, you do not interrupt, that's only if it's not aggressively coming to attack you. If it is aggressively coming to attack you, then you would interrupt your Shemona Esrei. Why does the Tosfos wait? Again, the Gemara, why does the contradiction that the Gemara finds from a brisa, why does it wait until Rav Sheshes tells us a distinction between a snake and a scorpion? Why does Tosfos wait for that distinction as well? Just 1 second, Ben.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, Ben.
I wanted to say there is a difference between a snake wrapped around your foot or a snake coming at you. Once he's wrapped around your foot, he's not a danger because he didn't intend to bite you.
Ben,
If
beautiful.
he wanted to bite you, he would bite you before he wraps himself around you.
Right.
So that's why they assumed it's not a life and death situation. It might be dangerous, but he's not intending to bite you.
Very, very good. Ben, you've come up with an explanation that is mentioned in the commentaries. And the point is this: there's two ways to learn the Mishnah. One way to learn the Mishnah is that the Mishnah is talking about, the Mishnah is telling us that a snake wrapped around your heel is not a danger to you. Because as Ben said, it hasn't bitten you yet. It's okay. It's doing its playing game. It's wrapping itself around your heel. It's not a danger to you. Therefore, do not interrupt your Shemona Esrei. That could be one way of learning the Mishnah.
Rabbi?
In that, if you learn the Mishnah that way, you could learn the Mishnah the same thing about a scorpion. A scorpion would be the same thing. If it's wrapping itself, coiling itself, however, and it's just, pleasantly going around you, be the same law. And therefore, do not interrupt. However, there's another way to learn the Mishnah. The other way to learn the Mishnah is that a snake is a life and death dangerous situation, and certain animals are life and death situations, and a snake is not. In a snake, you don't have to worry you don't have to be worried from. And those are the two ways to learn the Mishnah. Now, if you learn the Mishnah the first way, like Ben's way, then the snake and the scorpion are in the same category, and they could be dangerous creatures, but in this scenario, they're not considered a danger. Don't interrupt Shemona Esrei. However, if you learn it that way, they're dangerous. And if you fall into a pit that has snakes, that's life and death. That's a person, we assume he died. If it's wrapped around your heel, that's when, that's fine. That's not a contradiction to the brisa. If you learn the Mishnah Ben's way, there's no contradiction, because that way of learning the Mishnah means that a snake is a very dangerous creature, but if it's wrapped around your ankle, that specific snake is not a danger to you, and in this situation, it's also not a danger to you. So therefore, there's nothing to worry about. However, if someone falls into a pit full of snakes, that is considered a extreme danger and life and death, and we assume the person died. So that would be one way of learning the
Rabbi Smith?
Yes.
We often see that the Talmud emphasizes things that later are learned in science to be accurate. And a snake that's wrapped around a person's ankle is likely there for the warmth and is not in an aggressive mode.
Oh, thank you,
Because
thank you, Phyllis.
that's what they need in order to digest their food. So they'll wrap around without being aggressive. But
Right.
with the scorpion, it's totally, you know, that's biology different.
Right.
That's got a different system.
Okay, thank you, Phyllis, for clarifying the way it is in science. Interesting. Now, the Gemara then, now to conclude this point, the Gemara then says this difference. Rav Sheshas tells us, guess what? There's a difference between a snake and a scorpion. So once Rav Sheshas says that point, what comes out is that Rav Sheshas is telling us, guess what? Snakes are not dangerous animals. Scorpions are dangerous animals. So it has nothing to do with being wrapped around. So the Gemara says, really? A snake is not a dangerous animal? Now the Gemara has a contradiction to the Brisa. So I'm just sharing with you how every statement in the Gemara, how it's exactly specifically connected to the point where it comes in the Gemara, and it could not have mentioned this contradiction earlier. It had to wait till Rav Shesha says his contradiction until he tells us that the Mishnah seems to be saying that snakes are not dangerous. And on that, the Gemara asks, what do you mean they're not dangerous? They are dangerous. They're dangerous. We even allow a wife to get remarried. So on that, the Gemara says, yeah, when you fall into a pit of snakes, then it's considered dangerous, life and death. But until then, it's not considered a danger. And on that, the same thing is with Tosfos. On that, Tosfos says, a snake is not dangerous. So Tosfos has to clarify it might not be dangerous. It might not be a dangerous animal, but not if it's coming aggressively at you. If it's coming aggressively at you, then you do interrupt the Shemona Esrei. That would be if it was instigated by someone or you see it rushing towards you. So you would interrupt your Shemona Esrei. So that really is the previous Gemara that we learned yesterday. We also mentioned that the Mishnah said, it said 2 points. What did the Mishnah say in the beginning of the parak? The Mishnah told us that the first Mishnah in the chapter, it said, if a king says hello, if he's asking you, you should not reply. And if a snake is wrapped around your heel, don't interrupt. Now, one way of learning this is that there are 2 separate points. The first one is about a king speaking to you. It's talking about interrupting with speech. When it talks about a snake wrapped around your heel, don't interrupt means don't walk out of your Shemona Esrei. So it's telling us both things. Number one is not to interrupt with speech. Number 2, don't interrupt by walking away from your Shemona Esrei and moving your place and interrupting with movement without speech. That's one way of learning this. There is another way and that's the way the Rush learns it. The other way of learning this is that both cases we're talking about speech, and that means that even with the snake, we're talking about you're interrupting your Shemona Esrei by calling someone for help. But to actually move away, that you would be allowed to do. It's by calling someone for help and interrupting with speech, that would be considered an interruption. So what it boils down to is, the question is it considered an interruption only if you say something, or is it also considered an interruption if you move yourself to another location? Now, the next Gemara says that Reb Yitzchak said that if a person saw a bull coming towards you, So a person should interrupt, should stop his prayer, because Rav Oishia says you separate 50 amos, 50 cubits from a bull. And if it's a bull, that's only if it's a bull that's not known to gore. But if it's a bull that's known to gore, then you would separate the distance of one's vision of it. Either its vision, and in the class, a lot of you wanted to explain it to mean its vision of you. I don't know which one is correct, so I'm just leaving it vague. But it seems from the way the classroom wants to learn that it's from the vision of the bull towards a person, and so that is the same. That is in conjunction with this idea about interrupting one's prayer. How far away should this bull be that you would feel that you would need to be concerned about your safety? And Ben, did you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to know what's an arvat. I never heard about that animal. In the next couple lines, they talk about the arvad. And Rabbi Hanina stepped on his.
Yeah, it's an arod. Yeah. We're gonna read it. We're gonna learn it. Arod. Okay. Yeah, soon. Okay. Now the Gemara then brings a brisa also about a bull, and it mentions in the name of Reb Meir that if you see the head of a bull inside a basket of the straw that it's eating, so you should rush up to the roof and throw the ladder away so that you will save yourself, and not have any, not get wounded. And Shmuel said this is only if it's a black bull in the days of Nisan, because the Satan is dancing between his horns, and the idea is that it has a feeling of excitement and pleasantness, and it's enjoying itself in with the new grass, and somehow the Yetzer Hara, its evil side is having an overly overwhelming it with bad behavior. So you should definitely be careful from such an animal, such a bull. Okay. So now comes the next Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan. Tanu Rabbanan is the last little piece before the Mishnah. We're on page 33a, and let's see, we're about maybe 20 lines from the top of the page. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis learned. In the Hebrew, it's a tough and a resh with 2 lines, 2 quotation marks in the middle. A tough and a resh. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis learned. Ma'aseh b'makom echad. There's a story in a certain place. Shahaya aroid. There was an aroid. What is an aroid? An aroid is a combination between a snake and a toad, and it's considered very dangerous. In other words, a snake had relations with a toad, and they give birth to this aroid. So this animal is considered an extremely dangerous animal. So it says, it was damaging, it was a danger, it was wounding people. So so they told the famous Rabbi Hanina ben Daisa, a great miracle worker, a great tzaddik, a great Tana. So they told him, Amar Lahem. So Rabbi Hanina ben Daisa said to them, Haru li aschayra, show me where this animal, this aroid, is, where its hole is, where it comes out of the ground. Show me where its hole is. So they showed Rabbi Hanina ben Daisa where the hole is. Nasan akevai al pi hachar yatsa unashachai. So its heel went he put his akev, he put his heel on top of the hole. Yotza, and what happened? This aroid came out. You know, it saw someone blocking its ear hole, and it went and bit Reb Chanina ben Doisa. And what happened? Umeis oisei aroid, and that animal, that aroid, it died. That creature died. And Natalai Reb Chanina ben Doisa picked it up, he took it al kasefai on his shoulder, and and he brought it to the house of study. Amar lahem, and he said to them, Ru'u b'ni banai, see my sons, ein aroid memis. The aroid, this animal is not what kills. Ela hachet memis, it's the sin that kills. So this is the teaching of Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa, that he says it's not the bite, it's not the animal that kills, it's the sin. And at that moment, they said, Oy loy la adam, woe is to a person shepaga by aroid, that a aroid encounters him. And va'oy loy la aroid, woe is to the aroid shepaga by Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa, woe is to the aroid that Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa encounters, because the Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa caused this aroid to die, and the aroid normally causes people to die. But the point of the Gemara is that there are certain animals that are dangerous, and of course that would mean that a person would be obligated to interrupt their prayer, and at the same time, it also tells us that the sin is what really causes the animal to have power over a person, and the idea is that
You mean a person's sin?
Person sin,
Person's
yeah,
sin?
person
Okay.
sin, and there is a concept that a person normally has. There's a certain fear that a person's supposed to have that causes animals to be afraid of them, and the fact that a person sins, he loses that extra shine, that extra glow of godliness, and therefore the sin causes the animals not to be afraid of them. So that's an interesting point. It doesn't fit exactly with the words here. I'm just sharing with you that idea that generally we say that your fear should be upon the animals. There's a verse that says that the fear of you will be upon the animals. And the idea is that a human is supposed to cause there to be fear, because somehow Hashem's name is reflecting. It's reflected from us, and only when we damage, so to speak, we conceal God's name, it causes animals not to be afraid of us. But here, the story is that the animal did bite Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa, but the Gemara's understanding that the simple explanation is that the poison, it's not really poisonous unless you sin. And
Rabbi, we usually say, don't blame the messenger, because God sent somebody to kill you.
right.
You deserve to be dead. That's the reason
True.
you died, because you sinned.
Right. But there's also a pathway that what you're saying is correct, but it goes through the natural way things work. So, for example, if you weren't in that situation, so how did the person die? He, in other words, the method of death was through that animal.
Yeah.
But the point is that if the person would have, not had sin, then that animal would not have been able to be the method, to be the messenger for the death,
Right.
because the person wouldn't have had sins that would allow the animal to be that emissary, to be that messenger. Now, the big question on this Gemara, does anyone have any questions on this Gemara? There's a very big question on this Gemara. Think about what Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa did.
He put himself in danger.
Yeah, you should not put yourself in sakana.
Exactly. Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa put himself in a major sakana, a major danger. And because he put himself in this major danger, it's very surprising. How did he do that? I mean, he saved them, but how was he allowed to do such a thing? So the interesting thing is the Gemara Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, has the same story, but it has it a little different. The way the story is brought in the Jerusalem Talmud, the story is that the aroid, this animal, was
just him. He didn't. Yeah.
Did someone say something? Isaac, did you want to say something?
No. Sorry.
Okay. The story, the way it's brought in the Yerushalmi, is that Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa was in the middle of davening, and this aroid came to him and bit him, and he did not interrupt his prayer, and then they found the aroid dead. So according to that reading, Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa did not come to do this miracle and put himself into danger. It just happened on its own. He didn't do anything. He was not actively involved in trying to save the community and help the community out by putting himself into danger. This is not the story. According to the Jerusalem Talmud, the story is that he was in the middle of davening and it came to him and it bit him, but yet it died right afterwards and he didn't die. And so according to that, it's not a question. He did not put himself into danger. It's just a different version of the story, or maybe a different story. Maybe a story happened in another place, but that story that the Jerusalem Talmud has is not a problem. The question is about our Gemara. As our Gemara mentions it, that he actively put himself into a danger. So there are different commentaries try to come up with explanations that he knew that he had he had certain ability, a certain power that it wouldn't have had an effect on him. However, the commentaries they do deal with this and try to figure out how he was allowed to do such a thing. It is discussed in the commentaries. Because of his level of holiness,
strong faith.
Yeah. Well, I have a question.
Yes.
I guess the question is, where is there a prohibition from somebody purposefully putting themselves in mortal danger in contradiction to the sanctity of life and the consequences of that action? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question. That's the question.
Yeah.
How did Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa do this? Yeah, that's the question that we've been.
Yeah, but we have two contradictory, interpretations of it. One said he did it as a way to essentially prohibit somebody being, let's say, bitten and died, and he purposefully, essentially, committed a dangerous act that could have affected him adversely to the point of maybe dying. I mean, that's the way that I understand it. So I'm sort of befuddled by what is the real answer, but what is the dictate within the Talmud about the sanctity of life, and one does not go into a dangerous situation with the potential of dying, of wasting a life.
Right. Well, that rule is there. We all know you can't do that. The question is, looking at what he did, how do you explain it? And one answer is he knew he wouldn't be hurt by it.
And isn't that subjective?
All of life is subjective.
Well, I'm not so convinced of that.
Okay, you tell me something and I'll show you it's subjective. There's nothing that you can say is so absolute
Rabbi.
that is not subjective.
So the point is that, Robert, you are correct that a person should not put themselves into danger. That what you're saying is correct. I mean, that's what we're dealing with.
Right.
I will
Right.
tell you, there is a statement from the Baal Shem Tov that a person who's not afraid of anything, only from Hashem, if someone reached that level, if someone was on the level that he is afraid of zero, nothing but Hashem, he can rely that no evil will befall him. Of course, none of us are on that level, but just think about it. And the Baal Shem Tov himself was on that level. His father passed away when he was young, and he told him, "Fear not." That was his lesson. Don't fear anything but Hashem. And the Baal Shem Tov was the, he would hang out in the forest with the wild animals there, but he was afraid of nothing but Hashem. And such a person would be allowed to, do such a thing because he's not relying on a miracle. He is someone who, there's no chance that anything bad will happen to him, and that would be Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa was in that same league. So that I think that gives us a lot of inspiration of how we're supposed to fear nothing but Hashem. It gives us something to look towards, to some ambitious way of serving Hashem, of feeling, confident that Hashem is guarding us. There's nothing in the world that fears us but Hashem. Yes, Ezra.
It's Moshe.
No. I'm Ezra. I called on Ezra, Moshe. You'll have to wait a second, Moshe.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
Number one, in order to do that, you have to assume that you basically have no sins.
Right.
Because, okay. And
True.
we all have this problem. We don't know where we are, what level we're at. So, from my standpoint, I look at this and say, okay, I understand what you're saying, etc. But it also shows a little bit of an arrogance that he thinks that he is sinless to be able to do this.
So that's a good question. The problem is that we think of humility as like not in a sincere way. We think of it as a sort of like how do we envision ourselves? How do we think about ourselves? But when you talk about real knowledge of knowing who you really are, if you think about life that way, then there's no such concept as I am, a tzaddik can say, I am a tzaddik and I have zero sins because they're being honest with who they really are and they know exactly who they are. And, and that's not where the humility stands. The concept of humility for them would be that I am a tzaddik, I know I'm a tzaddik, but I am not on the same level as someone else because I have special power that Hashem gave me to control my evil inclination. And that's why I am where I am. But so they know exactly who they are. They know exactly what sins they've done and what they haven't done, what mitzvahs they've done. They know exactly who they are, but they still can feel humble that whatever they've accomplished and all the fact that they've never fallen into sin is because they have zero desire for sin. Had someone else had that same feeling of love for God and not had any desire for sin, they might even be on a higher level than they are. They might serve Hashem on a higher level. So the point is that they could still be humble, but they know who they are. And I think that's an important point to explain. In other words, we always think of humility as, oh, he's so arrogant because, he thinks he's a tzaddik. That's not the arrogance. The arrogance isn't when someone thinks they're a tzaddik. It's they might be. If they are, then, they are a tzaddik. They're allowed to think that because they know who they are. The arrogance is, do they think it came from them? Are they the ones who made themselves into a tzaddik? Or could it be that they just have they had an easier life? They didn't have the challenges that other people went through, and they didn't have the the desires that other people had, and they weren't in scenarios where other people were in that fell into certain sins and fell into did the wrong thing. This person has he has a brilliant mind. He's able to always know exactly what the right thing to do is. He has full control over his he never had a desire for certain sins. I mean, that is their humility, but they also know who they are. So that's what we're dealing with over here. But it is a good question. Yes, Moshe.
What about with regards to the Nachash? I mean, a sorcerer, a snake charmer who's able to deal with snakes, and they can have 5, 6 snakes around them. Some are very poisonous, there was I don't know if you're familiar with this. There was a place in Central Florida called the Serpentarium, where a guy would deal with snakes all the time. He actually had the venom that he had in his system was there to protect him, but over a period of time. But he would deal with the snakes in terms of using the venom for medicinal purposes. But the point I'm trying to say, in those days they had sorcerers, and perhaps they're able to deal with these kinds of animals, these kinds of creatures, and not be affected by them.
So you want to explain that Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, he was like a charmer, and he was able to handle this animal. Is that more or less how?
Well, I don't know what his. I wasn't there to know if he was training these creatures, but I mean, perhaps he had a command over the situation.
Right, or maybe he created a little vaccine that had a little poison from one of these animals, and he injected it in him, and he built antibodies that were able to fight the venom of getting a full-fledged bite. Yeah, it's possible for sure. I know someone who used to get bitten by bees all the time, and he said he can handle. He has a huge ability to handle bee bites because he continuously would get them, and he created his body is powerful, and he because he. Anyway, but in any event, that's a very nice explanation.
For 50 years, I can tell you, nobody ever plays with an animal they don't know already. So I don't care how good the snake charmer is. If he didn't have these already trained and worked with, he isn't doing it. And 2, to show him how we are on, we would rather sit here spending a half hour, an hour explaining every natural way of explaining how we did it, so we can walk away satisfied rather than just accepting it straight out that they got it and we don't.
Well, we're giving the whole rainbow of explanations. We already did the simple understanding, but there are other explanations here. But I didn't see this one from Moshe. So yeah, so you're right, Isaac. We shouldn't really assume that this is it's not brought in the commentaries. Yes, David.
It's good to do.
Anyway, it's good to think about the different options that we could come up with. But in any event, yes, David.
Yeah, you see that Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa didn't deal with this, and he dealt with this still in a natural way, because the toughest skin on the body is the heel. He didn't put his hand over it. Mm-hmm. If there's any possibility of a snake having trouble puncturing the skin, this toughest skin in the body is the heel. So he put. So he still.
It said it bit him.
Okay.
Yeah, it bit him in the heel.
Yeah, but the point is, the heel is the most protected part of the body in order to absorb a bite, because it's the thickest
I'm
skin
not
in the
disagreeing
body.
with you, David. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Very nice. Okay, very interesting. That
Rabbi, you want to see a snake?
Okay, thank you. Is that a picture of you?
Yeah.
What happened, Ben?
I went to visit the snake pit.
No, you got older. That's what happened.
Yeah.
So, David, your point is that he did this in a way that wasn't a full-fledged miracle. He minimized the miracle. Is that what you're saying? In order to serve Hashem more in this world rather than relying fully on a miracle, or he didn't want to rely on a miracle fully. Maybe it wasn't considered a full-fledged miracle because he was only going to get bitten in that area. He could have cut off the stinger. Maybe the poison could have been, because it's a thicker, he has more time to remove the sting. Is that what you're thinking? Or
No, I'm just thinking that in the middle of the entire scenario, the entire situation, he still wanted to act according to nature, which was,
Right.
I'm going to put my least vulnerable part of my body over this hole, and hopefully that will protect.
Right. Okay. Well, now I do want to just mention that Rashi does have something interesting here. He brings from a statement of the Bahag. He says that in the Jerusalem Talmud, they bring that when the arod bites someone, it depends on who gets to water first. If the arod gets to water first, then the person dies. If the person gets to water first, then the arod dies. So in other words, it depends on who gets to water first. And a miracle happened to Rabbi Hanina that a wellspring opened up right under his heel. And so the water healed, went to Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa first, and that caused the arod to die. So that's a more of a, some type of a, superstition or something, that whoever, that it somehow has some type of an effect. At least I'm not really sure how to translate it, but that's how that is brought in Rashi. And I don't know if it's in our version of the Jerusalem Talmud or not, but it is a statement in Rashi, and that's how they explain the miracle of how he was healed, because the water came to him first. So one of the commentaries says that Rashi was bothered with how did Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa enter into such a dangerous situation, and therefore Rashi brings this Jerusalem Talmud that it all depends on going to water, and it's not considered such a danger because Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa knew where the water is, so he assumed he could get there first, and being that he knew exactly where the water was, he felt he could get there first. And even if not, he figured he's doing a mitzvah to saving so many people, so he has that merit. And doing a mitzvah, you won't get damaged. But anyway, Hashem made a miracle that to reveal Hashem made a miracle under Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa to reveal his miracle. So that's the explanation brought in one of the commentaries, that's why Rashi brings it. So it's not considered such a danger because it all depends on who gets to the water first. I just wish I understood it more in a natural way. It sounds more like a spooky type of thing. Like why should it matter who gets to the water first? If you get to the water in the right amount of time, that should make it, that should be good enough. And if you don't get to the water in the right amount of time, so why does it matter who gets to the water first? That I don't know. But
my father, the Seflin of the Bracha, would say, this is, again, a kasha of a maisa. If you hear a story and you start asking questions and you start looking for answers, you make yourself mishuggah. You have to just accept the maisa, and that's it.
That's one way of learning, but we like to ask questions in this class, and that's my style. So, I don't.
Also ask the question, but don't feel you're going to walk away satisfied. Oh, I asked the question. Now I got the answer. So now it's all okay. It's not. you still walk away feeling there had to be something here that had to do with more than just the average. And if you're going to try to fit it, well, he knew he was going to race the snake to the water, so that was okay. If that makes you feel better, gesund to hate. I'm not against doing it, but
in any event, okay, thank you, Isaac. I do want to mention there is an opinion brought in Shulchan Aruch that a person would be allowed to enter themselves into a case of danger in order to save others from a definite danger. In other words, if Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa felt he's only in a questionable danger versus everyone else is in a definite danger, and the reason being of his holiness, he felt it's only a questionable danger, and therefore, or because he knew where the water was and he felt he could reach it first, whatever it is, he felt that this was a scenario where he's only a questionable danger, everyone else is more of a definite danger, and therefore, person would be allowed to do that to save others, and that is brought in the Shulchan Aruch as such an opinion. Yes, Ezra.
I just need a translation. And what you just quoted for Rashi, it says, Matzati behav amre b'ma'arava. So did they translate b'ma'arava as being the Yerushalmi?
Well, literally, b'ma'arava means in the west.
In the west.
Okay. And what it seems like is that Rashi did not have this version of the Jerusalem Talmud with this story in it. So therefore Rashi quotes the Bahag, Halachos Gedolos. He quotes it from the Bahag, this statement from the Yerushalmi.
Okay.
So in any event, maybe in the Yerushalmi it does explain it. I guess we should take a look there, but not now. It's 11:04 already. Maybe we'll just go. Is it okay if we take another 5 minutes since we started late? Is everyone okay with another 5 minutes?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. So
I want 10.
Okay.
You'll be alone.
So we just got up to the Mishnah, so let's just do the Mishnah. The Mishnah says as follows. Mazkirin Gevuras Geshamim, we mention the strength of rain, which means Mashiv Haruach Merda Geshem. We mention it B'Tchias HaMesim in the blessing of the Shmona Esrei of Tchias HaMesim. And the point is that where do we insert these prayers or praises? So we insert the praise that Hashem brings rain in the blessing of Tchias HaMesim, in that blessing. Ushe'ela, the request for rain, not the praise that Hashem brings rain, but the request. When we ask Hashem, the same talu matar, so the request is called she'ela. We do that in the middle blessings called Beberchas Hashanim, in the blessing of Mevarech Hashanim. In that blessing, Barech Aleinu, so we include over there the request for rain, the same talu matar. The Havdalah, in the blessing of Havdalah, the praise that we say that Hashem separates between Shabbos and the weekday, where do we include that in the Shemona Esrei? B'choinen Hadas, in the blessing of Choinen Hadas. In that blessing, Ata Choinen L'Adam Das, in that blessing, we include the Havdalah on Saturday night. Rabbi Akiva says, or after Yontiv as well, I should say, not only Saturday night. Now, Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Akiva argues, and he says that it deserves its own blessing. It deserves a fourth blessing of its own, and that is between the blessing of Hakel HaKadosh and the blessing of Ata Choinen, you include the Havdalah. So you include it in that blessing. You add a new blessing in between Hakel HaKadosh and Ata Choinen. Rabbi Eliezer says that you insert the Atochen Antano, the Havdalah, you insert it inside the blessing of Haidah, in the Maidim blessing. That's where you include it. Now, what comes out from this is that Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer both hold that the Havdalah blessing does not belong in the middle blessings, because it's not a request for, it's not really, it's more of a praise, and therefore it doesn't belong in the actual blessing of Atochayning. Instead, Rabbi Akiva says include it, but before the bracha of Atochayning. And so I'm just clarifying with you that what comes out from this argument of where to include the Havdalah, it comes out is, what is the main element of the Havdalah? Is it, is it more of a request for knowledge? So if so, that's the first opinion. So it belongs in one of the intermediate blessings of the Shemona Esrei, being that it's one of the 13 requests. It belongs, since it's a request, it belongs within those requests, while the other two opinions would hold that it's more about praise. And Rabbi Akiva, even though it's about praise, Rabbi Akiva says it is similar to Atochayning, and therefore put it in between. And Rabbi Eliezer says, let's include it in the Haidah, in the thanks, because what you're doing is thanking Hashem for the Shabbos and thanking Hashem for giving us knowledge to be able to differentiate, to separate between the weekday, the mundane, and the holy and the Shabbos. And so that's just to summarize the Mishnah, and we will, Mitzvah Hashem, pick up tomorrow. Okay, have a wonderful day, and sorry for the late beginning. Yes, we have some questions here. David?
Yeah, when I was talking yesterday about the angels saying the different blessings of the Shemona Esrei, so it says, Atachonin, that's the fourth blessing. It says, when Joseph was about to appear before Pharaoh, an angel of God taught him 70 languages in one night. The angels then praised God with the blessing, Atachonin, a gracious giver of knowledge. That's when that bracha came in, because the angels had praised Hashem for teaching Joseph all the languages in one night before he came to Pharaoh.
Nice. Is that a continuation in the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer? Does it say the source? Yeah.
Yes.
Wow, very nice.